Welcome to the Fun Astrology Podcast. Let's crank it up for Hump Day and Uranus Retrograde Day. Thomas Miller, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're listening. It's August 24th, Wednesday. And yep, this morning at 9:54 a.m. in Nashville, North Carolina, at least, Uranus stations retrograde. We have a new episode out on Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Robert Glasscock about Uranus going retrograde. So if you'd like to get his thoughts on it, you can check that out. He references the rewords, revisiting, reapplying, reassessing, and I know you guys are like, no, we don't need any re-surprises around here, please. Well, let's take another tact at Uranus, because I'll refer you over to that for that conversation on all the rewords of Uranus. But let's think of another, it's actually a reword, but not in the same context. Revolutionary, revolutionary. Uranus represents not only that which surprises us, but that which revolutionizes us. You know, sometimes revolutionary ideas are not traumatic. So we know astrology is built on polarity, so let's get on both sides of this. You could have a revolution. I've got an interesting story in my history, my family ancestry. My mom's dad was a railroad man, and he ended up going to the top of that business, actually. He was a very prominent figure in the transportation industry back in the 1930s, 40s, etc. But before that, in his career, he was sanctioned or hired as a surveyor for the Mexican Railroad. Ended up building the line that went from Mexico City up to the United States border. He was the chief engineer of that, and then ended up running the whole thing. So he was in Mexico City when President Diaz was overthrown in 1918. That was obviously when the socialist uprising took place. And he was the guy that smuggled Diaz to the coast and got him out of the country. Arranged a train at 2 o'clock in the morning or something to look like a cargo train, and Diaz and his family and entourage, small entourage, were stowed away as cargo, basically, and that's what got them out of town. Well, that was a revolution. That was a Uranian experience, even before they knew that Uranus was actually sitting up there, visible, but they couldn't tell at that time. That was a revolution that did have chaos that resulted in change, right? But then let's think about some other revolutions that were not traumatic. Like the Wright brothers, for example, when they finally realized that this contraption that lifted them off the ground actually propelled them for a few feet in the air. Wow. Or think of New Zealand's Sir Edmund Hillary, who in 1953, with a group of Sherpas and a couple of others, finally looked at the summit of Mount Everest and realized that the likelihood of them standing there in a few hours probably was going to happen. And then it did. And as they were summiting, taking those final 5, 10, 15 steps to the very top of Mount Everest, thinking of all of the people whose bodies were still on the mountain, all of the groups that had tried and failed, and now they were standing on revolutionary ground. Or on May 6, 1954, when Roger Bannister became the first person to run a mile in under 4 minutes. They said it couldn't be done. Then, within a matter of weeks and then months, dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and then eventually millions of people exceeded the 4-minute mile. Well, when a planet goes retrograde, we think of the re-aspects about it, but let's remember revolutionary, because now also one of the characteristics of a retrograde planet is that it brings the energy of that planet more internal than external. So hopefully, maybe, some of the things that we've seen Uranus cause externally get a little bit muted. We'll see how it handles Saturn in October. But as we think about revolutions that are favorable, that don't need the shakeup, they don't need the turmoil in the square, as happened in Mexico in 1918, we can focus on having personal breakthroughs of revolutionary proportion under this retrograde. How long do we have to work this out? All the way until January 22nd, 2023. So as we continue to watch what is taking place, obviously, in the world around us, remember, we can chart our own destiny. We choose our path through the storm, through the chaos, through whatever else is going on around us. And what the world needs, and this is a call toward, is personal, internal revolution so that we can help change the consciousness of the planet. So that's individually what the high timeline people are going to be focusing on between now and January. And Uranus is there to support us every day between now and then. Hope that helps shed a little bit of new perspective on an old transit. Retrograde Uranus 2022 and 2023 version. Let's roll. Only up. And we'll see you tomorrow on the Fun Astrology Podcast. Thanks for listening.